The Day the Earth Stood Still, 1951. I am fearful when I see people substituting fear for reason. It begins with silence, a flying saucer gliding over Washington, D.C. and landing on the lawn of humanity's most powerful government. But what follows isn't war, it's a warning. The Day the Earth Stood Still wasn't just another alien movie. Released in 1951 and directed by Robert Wise, it emerged in the early Cold War, when the fear of annihilation was palpable. But unlike most sci-fi films of its day, it didn't demonize the outsider, it humanized him. Klaatu, the extraterrestrial envoy played with calm authority by Michael Rennie, arrives not with conquest, but concern. His message is clear. Earth's growing arsenal of atomic power threatens more than just itself. It threatens the peace of the cosmos. Accompanying him is Gort, a silent, towering robot capable of leveling cities. But Gort doesn't attack. He watches. He waits until he's needed. What made this film revolutionary was its tone. It wasn't loud. It didn't preach. It asked, what would happen if we were confronted by a civilization more advanced and more moral than our own? Would we listen? Or react in fear? Backed by Bernard Herrmann's eerie theremin score and anchored by a strong performance from Patricia Neal, the film moves with a quiet urgency. There's no massive destruction, no spectacle, just a slow unfolding of distrust, misunderstanding, and eventually a desperate plea for unity. And its message still resonates. In a world grappling with nuclear tensions, artificial intelligence, and global instability, The Day the Earth Stood still feels startlingly contemporary. Klaatu's ultimatum isn't rooted in threat, it's rooted in responsibility. Join us and live in peace, he says, or pursue your present course and face obliteration. Forbidden Planet, 1956. My evil self is at that door, and I have no power to stop it. There are science fiction films that reflect their time, and then there are those that seem to leap far beyond it. Forbidden Planet did both. Released in 1956, it took the genre into uncharted territory, becoming one of the first sci-fi films to truly blend intellectual ambition with visual grandeur. It didn't just entertain, it redefined what audiences could expect from speculative cinema. Set on the distant planet Altair IV, the story follows a crew of space explorers who arrive to investigate the fate of a lost colony. What they find isn't ruins, but an isolated paradise ruled by Dr. Morbius and his daughter Altaira, the sole survivors of the expedition. Morbius has tapped into the technology of an extinct alien race, the Krell, unlocking immense knowledge and something far darker. At a time when most science fiction films featured rubber monsters and stock military characters, Forbidden Planet gave viewers Shakespeare. Its plot echoes The Tempest, with Morbius as a kind of Prospero figure, isolated and intoxicated by power. But instead of magic, he wields a mind-amplifying machine that manifests subconscious fears. What destroys the crew isn't a creature. It's the invisible projection of Morbius's own repressed darkness. That central idea that the greatest threat lies within us remains chilling even now. Technically, the film was years ahead of its time. It was the first sci-fi film shot in CinemaScope and one of the first to use an all-electronic musical score, created by Louis and Bibi Baron. The sets were elaborate, the matte paintings vast, and the design of Robbie the Robot was so influential that it launched an entire legacy of robot cinema. Even today, Forbidden Planet feels like the blueprint for the modern space epic. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1956. There's no emotion. None. Just the pretense of it. Sometimes, the scariest science fiction doesn't come from space. It comes from inside your own town, inside your own home, inside your own mind. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, released in 1956, is one of the most enduring films of the decade because it turns the ordinary into the unthinkable. The story is set in the small California town of Santa Mira, where Dr. Miles Binnell begins to notice something deeply wrong. Friends and neighbors insist that their loved ones aren't the same. They look the same, speak the same, but the light behind their eyes is gone. As more and more people begin to act strangely, the horrifying truth emerges. Humanity is being quietly replaced by emotionless replicas grown from alien pods while they sleep. With no laser guns, no robots, and no distant galaxies, this film builds dread in everyday settings. It's not about special effects. It's about a growing sense of helplessness, the feeling that everyone you trust is slipping away, one by one. Directed by Don Siegel on a modest budget, the film makes masterful use of shadow, close-up, and silence. The tension is suffocating. There's no music manipulating the audience. Just long, quiet moments of doubt and then sudden panic. The film has been interpreted in many ways. Some saw it as a Cold War parable, a warning against the spread of communism or the loss of individual freedom. Others viewed it as a critique of McCarthy-era paranoia, where anyone could be accused of being one of them. But what gives it staying power is its universal fear, losing what makes us human. Kevin McCarthy's final performance, wild-eyed, breathless, screaming, "They're here already, you're next!" is one of the most iconic in sci-fi history. The Thing from Another World, 1951. Watch the skies everywhere. Keep looking. Keep watching the skies. Buried beneath the Arctic ice, something waits. Silent, frozen, forgotten, and then it wakes. The Thing from Another World wasn't just a milestone in science fiction. It was a turning point in cinematic suspense. Released in 1951, it brought the alien invasion story closer to Earth, not with grand cities destroyed or galactic war, but with a handful of men and women trapped in an isolated research station, fighting something they barely understand. The plot begins with a mysterious crash in the Arctic Circle. A U.S. Air Force crew is dispatched to investigate, along with a group of scientists. What they uncover is a spacecraft buried in ice, and inside it, a humanoid figure frozen solid. It's brought back to the station for study, but when the ice thaws, survival becomes the only goal. The alien, played by a then-unknown James Arness, is more plant than animal, a walking organism that feeds on blood. But the real terror doesn't come from the creature's appearance. It comes from what the film doesn't show: shadows in the corridor, footsteps in the snow, flickers of light in a darkened hallway. It's horror through atmosphere, fear built frame by frame. Produced by Howard Hawks, the film was decades ahead of its time in pacing and dialogue. Characters spoke in overlapping lines. Scientists debated ethics. Military officers questioned authority. And at the center of it all was a moral divide. Do we try to communicate with the alien, or destroy it before it destroys us? It's this clash of ideals, reason versus instinct, curiosity versus fear that gives the film its lasting weight. Made during the early years of the Cold War, it reflects a nation unsure of how to face a world full of new dangers. Critics and audiences embraced it immediately, but its influence only grew over time. The Fly, 1958. I'm still me. I'm still human. It starts with a murder, not a monster. A scientist is found crushed in his lab, his face and arm destroyed in a hydraulic press. His wife confesses calmly. No signs of struggle. No motive. Just a haunting question. Why? The Fly unfolds not as an invasion or a battle for Earth, but as something far more intimate, the slow, horrific unraveling of a man who crossed a boundary science wasn't ready for. André Delambre is a brilliant physicist obsessed with matter transportation. His experiments seem harmless at first, moving objects from one pod to another. But when he tries it on himself, he doesn't realize a housefly has entered the chamber with him. What emerges is not a grotesque monster immediately. It's still André, but something is off. At first, he hides his face under a cloth, communicates with his wife only by written notes. Then, his behavior changes. His thoughts shift. As his body transforms, so does his mind, not into madness, but into desperation. He's aware of what's happening to him, and it terrifies him. Directed by Kurt Neumann and starring David Hedison as André, the film is built not on spectacle, but sorrow. Vincent Price, in a quieter-than-usual performance, plays the brother-in-law whose skepticism turns to grief. But it's Patricia Owens as Helene, André's wife, who carries the emotional weight watching the man she loves dissolve into something unrecognizable. What makes The Fly endure isn't just the famous final scene, the tiny hybrid creature trapped in a spider's web screaming, "Help me!" in a voice barely human. It's the sadness that leads up to it. There was no villain, no madman, just a husband, a father, a man who believed too deeply in the promise of progress. This island Earth, 1955. The universe is vast, but perhaps the greatest distance is between two minds that can't understand each other. It starts with a strange package of electronic parts that don't belong to any known system. A brilliant physicist assembles them, and suddenly he's looking through a screen into another world. The invitation has been sent. The test has begun. This island Earth isn't a story of conquest. It's a story of recruitment, of deception, and ultimately, of reflection. Released in 1955 and based on a serialized novel, the film dared to imagine a different kind of alien contact, not a war, but a plea. Dr. Cal Meacham is chosen to join a select group of scientists gathered under mysterious circumstances. Their host, Exeter, is clearly not of this world. He is gentle, intelligent, and guarded. He speaks of advanced knowledge and peaceful progress, but the truth is soon revealed. Exeter's planet, Metaluna, is dying, and Earth's greatest minds are being conscripted, not asked to help save it. From its first moments, this island Earth set itself apart with its bold visual style. Shot in Technicolor, with surreal sets and glowing labs, it brought a sense of spectacle and mystery to a genre still finding its footing. The Interocitor, the alien communications device, became an icon. And the Metaluna mutant, though only briefly seen, is still one of sci-fi's most recognizable monsters. But the real impact of the film is emotional. Exeter is not a villain. He's desperate, civilized, trapped by the limitations of his species and the chaos of interstellar war. When Metaluna begins to collapse under atomic bombardment, his final words carry a sadness that lingers far beyond the final frame. What makes the film feel fresh today is its restraint. The threat isn't a singular creature or exploding city, it's moral ambiguity. Can intelligence survive without empathy? Can civilization endure if it sacrifices others for its own survival? War of the Worlds, 1953. The Martians had no resistance to the bacteria in our atmosphere. By the toll of 1 billion deaths, man had earned his immunity. It begins with a flash in the sky, a meteor streaking to Earth in a blaze of fire. People gather to see where it lands, unaware that it carries not wonder, but war. Released in 1953 and based on H.G. Wells's iconic novel, The War of the Worlds brought global annihilation into vivid color and terrifying motion. It was the first major adaptation of Wells's story, and it remains one of the most influential science fiction films ever made. The plot is stark and immediate. Martians arrive on Earth and begin a methodical, unstoppable conquest. Cities fall, governments collapse, humanity scrambles for survival. There is no negotiation, no mercy, just towering, manta ray-shaped war machines gliding across the land, reducing everything in their path to ash. Directed by Byron Haskin and produced by George Pal, the film's impact was both visual and emotional. Using innovative wirework, matte paintings, and explosive effects, it captured the awe and horror of a technologically superior invader. The sound of the Martian heat ray, a piercing, rising hum, still sends chills, and the destruction of Los Angeles was so iconic it became stock footage for years after. But beyond the spectacle was something deeper. This wasn't just about Martians. It was about the fear of being unprepared, of being powerless in the face of overwhelming force. Released during the height of the Cold War, it tapped directly into the nuclear anxiety that haunted the 1950s. There was no heroic last stand, no great weapon to save the day. In the end, it wasn't human ingenuity that stopped the invasion. It was nature. It was bacteria. The smallest things invisible, overlooked, became Earth's salvation. That ending, lifted from Wells's original, remains one of the most humbling in science fiction. The Incredible Shrinking Man, 1957. To God, there is no zero. I still exist. Science fiction often looks outward to space, to time, to the future. But in 1957, one film turned inward, reducing the scale of its spectacle until the entire universe could be found in a basement. The Incredible Shrinking Man, directed by Jack Arnold and based on a novel by Richard Matheson, is perhaps the most poetic film in 1950s sci-fi. It begins with a simple premise. After being exposed to a mysterious radioactive mist, an ordinary man begins to shrink, slowly, inexorably, until the world around him, his home, his cat, a water droplet, becomes a monstrous battleground. Scott Carey, played with growing desperation by Grant Williams, isn't a hero in the traditional sense. He's not saving Earth or discovering new worlds. He's trying to survive in his own house. A thread spool becomes a shelter. A matchstick becomes a weapon. A spider becomes a predator. As he shrinks, so does his identity, his masculinity, his pride, his sense of self. But what begins as a body horror story becomes something far more philosophical. The film never lets go of the emotional toll. His marriage falters. His friendships vanish. The world doesn't know how to handle someone like him, someone who no longer fits its rules. Jack Arnold directs with surprising restraint, using practical effects and oversized sets to build an immersive, unsettling perspective. But it's the final 10 minutes that truly elevate the film into something transcendent. Alone, having shrunk beyond visibility, Scott enters the subatomic, and instead of despairing, he finds meaning. A voiceover delivers one of the most quietly profound monologues in sci-fi history, acknowledging not just survival, but spiritual continuity. No explosions, no aliens, just a man facing the void and refusing to disappear.